Pistons roar, smoke rises on the Industrial Revolution. Cities flourish as flocks of people come in search of opportunities. Modern civilization emerges. Traditional colonial structures, church, family, and local law no longer address society's responsibility to care for the needy or punish lawbreakers. Communities search for new solutions to problems posed by its most marginalized members: criminals, orphans, the insane, and the physically handicapped.
Prisons, hospitals, and asylums become commonplace by the mid-19th century. Reformers view cultural changes as the reason for the mental and physical handicaps of the institutionalized. Is it not to the habits, the customs, the temptations of civilized society that we owe most of these calamities? However, in 1883, Charles Darwin's British cousin, Sir Francis Galton, develops a different explanation for what he perceives to be mental and physical defects. Gregor Mendel's and Darwin's research provides the backbone for Galton's revolutionary belief that people inherit morals and intelligence. Combined together, genetics, eugenics, and social Darwinism lead to new thinking about natural selection in humans. Advocating the regulation of family size based on the parent's hereditary endowment, Galton coins the term eugenics to describe his ideas.
Later in the 19th century, Frenchman Alfred Binet fears misuse of his study of mental age. He warns, "Intelligence is too complex to capture with a single number." By 1900, America's progressive movement emerges, a response to perceived sources of social chaos, urbanization, immigration, and industrialization. But science offers a solution.
The aim of scientific management was to bring everything from the factory floor and production line to legislation regarding unions under rational planning and control. In 1906, H. Goddard adds IQ to America's vocabulary, using the term exactly as Binet fears. Goddard, director of the New Jersey Training School, studies the Calicacs, a family of so-called feeble-minded criminals. He publicly claims that immorality is, indeed, a hereditary trait related to mental age.
We had clusters of families that had problems, and those families had hereditary problems. And if those families were somehow eliminated, or at least if their grandchildren were eliminated, you wouldn't have to deal with the same kinds of social costs.
A seeming abundance of feeble-minded families creates fear that mental institutions face an epidemic of idiocy. Opening in 1910, the Virginia Colony for the Epileptic and Feeble-Minded is one such facility. Dr. Albert Priddy, first superintendent of the colony, considers it his responsibility to relieve government of the financial burden of an institution bursting at the seams with outcasts. Like other progressive movement reformers, Priddy believes the interest of society must override the rights of individuals, particularly those deemed defective. He sees eugenics as a version of scientific management, social engineering through reproductive control, and sterilization as a strategy to prevent social problems rather than deal with them later.
Priddy and Aubrey Strode, a Virginia legislator, seek out Harry Laughlin, director of the Eugenics Record Office in Cold Spring Harbor, New York, to draft a sterilization law. On March 20th, 1924, Virginia's General Assembly approves the Eugenical Sterilization Act. It states, "Heredity plays an important part in the transmission of insanity, idiocy, imbecility, epilepsy, and crime, and the reproduction of defective persons represents a menace to society." This act propels a teenager onto a collision course with Dr. Priddy. Growing up in the shadow of Jefferson's Monticello, Carrie Buck lives on the wrong side of the tracks in Charlottesville.
Her mother, Emma Buck, is incarcerated in the Virginia colony for alleged promiscuity. An orphaned Carrie lives with a foster family. While there, she is raped by a family member and becomes pregnant. After Carrie delivers her baby, a local judge sends Carrie to the colony as well. Soon after Carrie's arrival, Priddy orders her sterilization, setting up a test of Virginia's new eugenics law. A court battle ensues on November 19, 1924, in Amherst, Virginia. Appointed to defend her rights, Carrie's lawyer, ironically, is a founding board member of the Virginia colony and a friend of Dr. Priddy. Expert witnesses for the Commonwealth of Virginia label all three members of the Buck family as feeble-minded. Without even meeting Carrie Buck, Dr. Laughlin states she has a mental age of 9 years and is a potential parent of socially inadequate or defective offspring.
This evidence bolsters the case that sterilization allows the state to release from institutions defective persons who are a menace, but if incapable of procreating, might be discharged with safety and become self-supporting with benefit to themselves and society. Carrie Buck loses the court case, but her attorney files an appeal with the United States Supreme Court. He claims the 14th Amendment affords protection of a person's right to full bodily integrity. Across America, many watched this court case closely. The outcome will determine the legality of sterilization laws elsewhere.
On May 2, 1927, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, himself a student of eugenics, announces the Supreme Court's ruling in favor of the Commonwealth. It is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime, or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Sterilized in 1927, Carrie Buck is paroled from the Virginia colony. She marries, but can never bear another child. An honor roll student, Carrie's daughter dies at age 9. The court's denial of Carrie Buck's quest for 14th Amendment protection results in enactment of sterilization laws across the nation. Virginia's 1924 Act also becomes a model for eugenics laws in 30 other countries.
The most devastating repercussions take their toll in Nazi Germany. In 1933, Hitler lauds Virginia's law, and later grants Harry Laughlin an honorary doctorate from the University of Heidelberg. Hitler's reign of terror leads to the forced sterilization of over 2 million people. During the Nuremberg trials, German lawyers cite Buck v. Bell as evidence of America's constitutional support of sterilization laws. Despite calls to end the work of eugenicists in the United States, most people remain uninformed about the irreversible impact of eugenical laws. From the 1920s until the 1970s, sterilization continues at the Virginia colony. Men on Tuesdays, women on Thursdays. Throughout the 20th century, social justice movements promote the constitutionally protected rights of all citizens. Lost among the many forceful voices advocating for prominent minority groups, victims of eugenical laws live in silence. They are
a silent and ashamed segment of the population. The victims were not powerful people politically. They didn't have money, they had very little clout, and they didn't speak up for themselves, and very few people spoke up for them.
Then, Dr. Ray Nelson is appointed director of the Virginia colony in 1973. He discovers over 4,000 sterilization records, prompting him to publicly share the Virginia colony's hidden history. Newspaper interviews with Nelson and former residents ignite widespread reaction. Finally, victims' voices are silent no more.
Talked to all my people and said they found us as food and said I didn't have no business over in the first place. Took my daddy over there and sit him in. When it first left the call, that people looked down on you like you was a wild animal or something. And they're walking up the street sometimes and people would say to you, "Get out of the way, you old colonization."
In 1979, Virginia's General Assembly repealed the Eugenical Sterilization Act. By then, Virginia had sterilized more citizens per capita than any other state. The American Civil Liberties Union in 1980 sought legal relief for sterilization victims. In response, Virginia finally acknowledged the long-term impact of the 1924 Act, promising mental health assistance to its victims. From the 1980s on, journalists and activists lobbied for an apology to those who suffered under a law that promoted unnatural selection.
We as citizens have a responsibility to watch what is happening in our public policies and to really examine what is happening to people with less political power than we might have, to be sure that we are not trampling all over people's rights.
On May 2, 2002, the 75th anniversary of the landmark Buck v. Bell case, the Commonwealth responded to this dark passage in Virginia's history. A ceremony honored the victims of the most egregious outcome of the lamentable eugenics movement. And at long last, Governor Mark Warner officially apologized on behalf of the Commonwealth. Following Virginia's lead, Washington, Oregon, and North Carolina also extended apologies to victims of sterilization laws.